My husband's new wife showed up at my door, wearing a smug, greedy grin. She said, "We're here to claim our rightful share of your father's estate. Move out immediately." I couldn't help but smile as I saw my lawyer walking in right behind her. The morning dew was still clinging to the roses when I heard the sound of expensive heels crunching along my garden path. I didn't need to look up to know exactly who it was. Only one person would dare wear Valencia and company and trample through my father's beloved garden. It was Brooklyn. Her voice oozed with insincerity as she said, "Still playing in the dirt, I see." I kept on pruning my father's white roses, the ones he'd planted for my wedding day, the wedding that had ended in divorce papers, and my ex-husband running off with the woman now standing behind me. "Hello, Chloe," I said, my voice steady. "You know why I'm here." She took a step closer, casting a shadow across the flower bed. "The reading of the will is tomorrow, and Ethan and I think it's best to discuss things civilly." Finally, I turned around, wiping the soil from my hands onto my gardening apron. "There's nothing to discuss. This is my father's house," I stated firmly. "His estate." "Well, was," Chloe corrected, her lips curling into a smug grin. "And since Ethan was like a son to Logan for 15 years, we believe we're entitled to our fair share." The pruning shears in my hands suddenly felt heavier. "The same Ethan who cheated on his daughter with his secretary?" I raised an eyebrow. "That Ethan? Ancient history," Chloe waved off dismissively. "Logan forgave him. They still played golf every Sunday," she added, pausing for effect. "Well, you know, my father's death was still too fresh, a wound that hadn't even begun to heal. He had only been gone for a few weeks, and here was this woman, this vulture, circling, thinking she could snatch up what she thought was easy prey. My father wouldn't have left Ethan," I said firmly, standing up to my full height. "Anything. He was many things, but he wasn't stupid." Chloe's fake smile faltered, but she quickly recovered. "We'll see about that. Your brother Caleb seems to think differently." The mention of my brother sent a cold chill down my spine. We hadn't spoken since Dad's funeral, where he'd spent more time consoling Ethan than his own sister. "You've spoken to Caleb?" I asked, my voice tight. "Oh, honey," Chloe cooed, stepping closer, her voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. "We've done more than just speak. He's been very helpful." I gripped the pruning shears tighter, remembering my father's words from years ago. "The roses need a firm hand, Brooke, but never a cruel one. Even the sharpest thorns serve a purpose." "Get off my property, Chloe," I said quietly, my patience wearing thin, "before I forget my manners." She laughed, the sound grating like breaking glass. "Your property? That's cute. This house is worth $1 million, Brooklyn. Did you really think you get to keep it all to yourself? Playing house in your daddy's mansion while the rest of us get nothing?" "My father built this house brick by brick," I said, keeping my voice steady even though the rage was rising inside me. "He planted every tree, designed every room. This isn't about money. This is about legacy." "Legacy?" Chloe snorted. "Wake up, Brooklyn. Everything is about money. And tomorrow, when that will is read, you're going to learn that the hard way." She turned to leave but stopped at the garden gate. "Oh, and you might want to start packing. Ethan and I will need at least a month to renovate before we move in." As her heels clicked down the path, I looked down at the roses. Their white petals were now spotted with soil from where my trembling hands had crushed them. Dad had always said white roses represented new beginnings, but all I could see was red. I pulled out my phone and dialed the one person I knew would understand. "Savannah? It's me. Chloe just paid me a visit." "Yeah? She's exactly as bad as we thought. Can you come over? There's something about the will I need to discuss with you." My best friend's voice was firm and reassuring. "I'll be there in minutes. Don't worry, Brooklyn. Your father was smarter than they know." As I ended the call, I noticed a small envelope sticking out from beneath one of the rose bushes, its corner damp with dew. The handwriting on it was unmistakably my father's, and it was addressed to me. I picked it up with shaking hands, wondering how long it had been waiting there, hidden among the thorns. The paper felt heavy, as though it carried more than just words. "Well, Dad," I whispered, turning the envelope over in my hands. "Looks like you left me one last surprise." The sound of Chloe's car engine faded into the distance as I stood in the garden, holding what felt like the first piece of a puzzle my father had left behind. Whatever game Chloe and Ethan were playing, I had a feeling they were about to find out they'd chosen the wrong opponent. Savannah arrived exactly when she promised, her legal briefcase in one hand and a bottle of wine in the other. "I figured we might need this," she said, holding up the wine as she walked into Dad's study. I was still holding the unopened envelope, perched on the edge of my father's leather chair. The room smelled of his pipe tobacco and old books. Since I wasn't ready to lose to Chloe's promised renovations. "You haven't opened it yet?" Savannah nodded at the envelope, setting her briefcase down with a heavy thud. "I wanted to wait for you." I turned the envelope over again. "After what Chloe said about Caleb helping them—" "Open it," Savannah insisted, pouring 2 generous glasses of wine. "Your father was very specific about certain things being revealed at certain times." My head snapped up. "What do you mean?" She handed me a glass. "Open the letter, Madeline." With trembling fingers, I broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a small key. "Dear Brooke," I read aloud, my father's voice echoing in my head. "If you're reading this, then someone has already made a move on the estate. Knowing human nature as I do, I'm guessing it's Chloe. She always did remind me of a shark, teeth bared and no soul to speak of." Savannah snorted into her wine glass. "The key enclosed opens the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside, you'll find everything you need to protect what's yours. Remember what I taught you about chess. Sometimes you have to sacrifice a pawn to protect the queen. Love, Dad." I looked up at Savannah, who was already heading toward the desk. "You knew about this?" I asked. "I helped him set it up," she admitted, gesturing for me to use the key. "Your father came to me months ago, right after his diagnosis. He knew exactly how things would unfold." The drawer clicked open softly. Inside was a thick manila envelope and a USB drive. "Before you look at those," Savannah said, sitting on the edge of the desk, "there's something you need to know about tomorrow's will reading. Your father added a codicil 3 days before he died." "A what?" "A modification to the will. And trust me, it's going to change everything." I spread the contents of the manila envelope across the desk. Photos spilled out, dozens of them. Savannah meeting with someone in a dark parking lot. Ethan entering a lawyer's office that wasn't Savannah's. Bank statements. Email printouts. "Dad had them investigated?" I asked, barely able to believe what I was seeing. "Better." Savannah's smile was sharp. "He had them followed. That USB drive contains video footage of Savannah attempting to bribe your father's nurse for information about his will 2 days before he died." My hands shook as I picked up one of the photos. "Is that Caleb?" "Meeting with Chloe 3 weeks before your father's death," Savannah confirmed. "But look at his face in the next photo." The second photo showed my brother leaving the meeting, his expression twisted with disgust. He was holding what looked like a check. "He kept the check as evidence," Savannah explained. "Brought it straight to your father." That's when Logan knew he had to act fast. "But Chloe said Caleb was helping them." "Your brother's been playing a dangerous game, Brooklyn," Savannah said, "feeding them just enough information to keep them confident, all while helping your father gather evidence of their conspiracy." I sank back into the chair, my mind spinning. Why didn't he tell me? Because Chloe needed to show her hand first. Savannah pulled out some papers from her briefcase. "Tomorrow when I read the will, Chloe and Ethan are going to think they've won. The initial reading will grant them a significant portion of the estate." "What?" I stood up so fast that my wine glass tipped over, spilling red onto the carpet. "Let me finish." Savannah held up her hand. "That's when the codicil kicks in. Your father set a trap, Brooklyn. The moment they accept the inheritance, they trigger a clause that reveals their attempted manipulation and fraud. Everything, the photos, the videos, the bribes, becomes public record." I stared at the evidence spread across the desk, understanding dawning on me. He made them think they won so they'd incriminate themselves. "Exactly." Savannah's grin was triumphant. "The real will leaves everything to you, with a trust set up for Caleb. Chloe and Ethan get nothing, except a very public exposure of their true characters. And tomorrow," Savannah finished her wine, "we'll watch them walk right into the trap they set for themselves. Your father's last lesson about consequences. I picked up his letter again, running my fingers over his familiar handwriting. Even from beyond the grave, he was protecting me, teaching me, helping me fight back. One more thing, Savannah said softly. Caleb asked to see you tonight. He has something else you need to know before tomorrow. I glanced out the study window at the setting sun, my mind wandering to my brother, to Chloe's smug expression in the garden, and to all the pieces my father had carefully set into place. Tell him to come over, I said. It's time we had a family reunion. Caleb showed up after dark, looking nothing like the confident brother who had stood by Ethan at the funeral. His designer suit was wrinkled, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. He hesitated at the doorway of the study, clutching a leather portfolio like it was a shield. You look terrible, I remarked, trying to break the tension. Yeah, well, playing double agent isn't as glamorous as the movies make it seem. He forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Can I come in? I motioned to the chair across from me. Savannah had left an hour ago, but the evidence of our earlier discovery still scattered across Dad's desk. I see you found Dad's insurance policy, Caleb said, nodding at the photos. Why didn't you tell me what you were doing? The question slipped out sharper than I'd intended. Caleb slumped into the chair. Because I needed to make it right. After everything with Ethan, the way I treated you during the divorce, I was an idiot, Brooke. You were my brother, I corrected him. You were supposed to be on my side. I know, he said quietly. He opened the portfolio and pulled out a check. This is what Chloe offered me to testify that Dad wasn't of sound mind when he made his final will. $500,000 to betray my own sister. I stared at the check, then at my brother. But you didn't cash it. No. He shook his head. I took it straight to Dad. Caleb's voice cracked. You should have seen his face, Brooke. Not angry, just disappointed. That's when he told me about his plan. The grandfather clock in the hall chimed, each toll echoing through the heavy silence. There's more, Caleb continued, pulling out a phone. I recorded everything, every meeting, every offer, every threat. Chloe, he pressed play. Her voice filled the room, cold and calculating. Once the old man kicks it, we'll contest the will. With your testimony about his mental state and Ethan's long relationship with him, we'll get everything. That bitch Brooklyn won't know what hit her. My hands clenched into fists. When was this? 2 months ago. But wait, there's worse. Caleb fast-forwarded the recording. Now Ethan's voice echoed through the room. We'll sell the house, liquidate the assets. Brooklyn can go back to her little apartment and her pathetic gardening business. She never deserved any of this anyway. Turn it off, I whispered. Caleb complied, then pulled out one final document. This is why I came tonight. Chloe didn't just want the money, Brooke. She wanted revenge on you. Revenge? For what? For making Ethan feel guilty. For making him pay alimony, he paused. For making him look bad when you caught them together. The memory hit me like a physical blow, walking into my own bedroom and finding them there. Chloe's triumphant smile as my marriage crumbled. She was his secretary for 3 years, Caleb continued. She planned everything, worked her way into his life, into Dad's social circle. This document proves she started embezzling from Dad's company 6 months before you caught them. I snatched the paper from him, scanning the bank transfers and account numbers. Dad knew about this, Caleb said quietly. Found out right before his diagnosis. He was building a case against her, but then the cancer, his voice trailed off. That's when he started planning this instead. Said sometimes justice needs a different path. The codicil, I murmured. Yeah. Tomorrow's going to be brutal, Brooke. They think they've got it all figured out. Chloe's even hired a camera crew to document the historic moment when they take possession of the estate. Despite everything, I laughed. She hired cameras to record her own downfall? Dad would have appreciated the irony. Caleb smiled, a real one this time. Listen, I know I can't undo the past 3 years with one night of revelations, but I want you to know I'm here now. Whatever happens tomorrow, I've got your back. I stood up and walked over to the window, looking out at Dad's garden, bathed in the soft glow of moonlight. Remember when we were kids and Dad caught us fighting over that toy car, the red Mercedes? Caleb joined me at the window. He made us wash every window in the house, he said, his voice tinged with a bit of humor. Said we needed to learn to see things clearly. I turned to face my brother. I see clearly now, Caleb. I see what Dad was trying to teach us, even at the end. He nodded, understanding shining in his eyes. Sometimes the biggest victory isn't in winning, he said, finishing my thought. It's in letting your enemies defeat themselves. The grandfather clock chimed 1/4 past, the sound a stark reminder that tomorrow was drawing nearer with each passing tick. You should get some rest, Caleb said, gathering his things. Tomorrow's going to be one hell of a show. As I watched him leave, I touched the window pane, cool and solid under my fingers. Dad had always loved these windows, calling them the eyes of the house, watching over his family. Tomorrow they would witness justice, served exactly the way he had planned it. The morning of the will reading dawned bright and clear. I was in Dad's study again, this time watching Savannah arrange papers on the massive oak desk while camera equipment was being set up around the room. Chloe's camera crew is here, Caleb announced, slipping through the door. You should see her out there, practicing her gracious acceptance speech. Everything ready? I asked Savannah. She patted her briefcase. All set. The codicil is sealed in this envelope, along with copies of all the evidence. Once they accept the initial terms, a commotion in the hallway cut her off. Chloe's voice carried through the door, high-pitched and excited. This is where we'll put the new chandelier. The old one is so dated. Places, everyone, Savannah muttered, straightening her suit jacket. Let the show begin. Chloe swept in first, wearing a black dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Ethan followed, looking uncomfortable in his perfectly tailored suit. The camera crew trailed behind them, adjusting lights and checking angles. Brooklyn? Ethan nodded stiffly. It was the first time he'd spoken to me directly since the divorce. Let's begin, Savannah announced, taking her place behind Dad's desk. As Logan's attorney, I'll be reading his last will and testament, along with any additional documents he prepared before his passing. Chloe practically bounced in her seat. We're ready. The initial reading went exactly as Savannah had warned me. Dad's estate, including the house and company shares, was to be divided. 60% to me, 40% to Ethan and Chloe. I knew it. Chloe squealed, grabbing Ethan's arm. Logan loved us too much to leave us out. However, Savannah continued, her voice cutting through Chloe's celebration. There is a codicil to the will, added 3 days before Logan's death. Chloe's smile faltered. A what? A modification, Ethan explained, suddenly looking nervous. What kind of modification? Savannah broke the seal on the envelope. The acceptance of any inheritance under this will is contingent upon a full investigation into certain financial irregularities discovered in the months preceding Logan's death. The room went completely silent. Even the cameras seemed to hold their breath. What irregularities? Chloe's voice had lost its triumphant edge. Perhaps these will explain, Savannah said, sliding the photos across the desk. Or this USB drive containing footage of attempted bribery, or these bank statements showing systematic embezzlement from Carrick Dynamics. Ethan grabbed one of the photos, his face draining of color. Where did you get these? Dad had quite the collection of evidence, Caleb spoke up from his corner, including recordings of you both planning to contest the will based on false testimony about his mental state. Chloe shot to her feet so quickly her chair toppled backward. Turn those cameras off now. Oh no, I said, standing to face her. The cameras stay. You wanted to document this historic moment, remember? You can't do this, she hissed. Ethan, tell them they can't do this. But Ethan was still staring at the photos, particularly one showing him entering a competitor's office with confidential company documents. The codicil is quite clear, Savannah continued, as calm and professional as ever. Any attempt to claim inheritance automatically triggers the release of all this evidence to the proper authorities. The choice is yours, she added. Choice? Chloe laughed hysterically. What choice? You've trapped us. No, I corrected her. You trapped yourselves. Every scheme, every plot, every attempt to steal what wasn't yours. It all led to this moment. This is your fault. She whirled on Caleb. You were supposed to help us. Caleb shrugged. I did help, just not you. Ethan, Chloe pleaded. Do something! But Ethan was already standing, straightening his tie with shaky hands. It's over, Chloe. We've lost. The hell it is, she snapped. I won't let that bitch win. That bitch is my daughter. Dad's voice filled the room. Everyone froze as Savannah pressed play on a video file. Dad's face appeared on one of the camera crew's monitors, thin but determined. The footage had been recorded just days before his death. And if you're watching this, it means you've shown your true colors, just as I knew you would. Greed is a terrible teacher, but consequences are excellent students. Chloe's mascara ran in black streaks as she backed toward the door. This isn't over. Actually, Savannah said calmly, it is. The police are waiting in the foyer to discuss the evidence of embezzlement. I'd suggest cooperating. It might help with sentencing. As Chloe and Ethan were led away, the cameras still rolling, I felt Dad's presence in every corner of the room. He had orchestrated it all, not just to protect his legacy, but to teach one final lesson about justice and patience. Well, Caleb said into the silence, I guess those cameras caught their historic moment after all. The media circus that followed was exactly what Chloe had wanted, just not in the way she had planned. By evening, local news vans lined the street, and my phone wouldn't stop buzzing with calls from reporters. You need to see this, Caleb said, turning up the volume on Dad's old television in the study. Chloe's arrest was playing on every channel. Her mascara-streaked face was a stark contrast to her designer dress as officers led her to a police car. The investigation into Carrick Dynamics has uncovered multiple instances of fraud, the reporter's voice droned on. Turn it off, I said, rubbing my temples. I can't watch anymore. Savannah burst through the door, waving her phone. It gets better, Savannah said, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. The DA just called. They found offshore accounts, dummy corporations, everything. Chloe wasn't just stealing from your father's company, she continued. She was running an entire network of fraudulent schemes. And Ethan, I asked, not sure why I still cared about my ex-husband's fate. Singing like a canary, Caleb replied. Turns out he's not so loyal when facing serious prison time. A sharp knock at the study door made us all jump. A police detective entered, looking apologetic. Miss Harrison, we need to discuss some additional evidence we've uncovered. More? I gestured for him to sit. What now? We found documents in Miss West's apartment that suggest this wasn't her first attempt at this type of scheme. There are at least 3 other cases of her targeting wealthy families, though she never succeeded on this scale before. Savannah leaned forward, intrigued. Other families? Yes, the detective confirmed. She would typically work her way into their lives through employment or social connections, then orchestrate situations to gain access to their assets. He pulled out a folder, placing it on the desk. Sound familiar? I whispered. The secretary position, Savannah murmured. It wasn't random. No, the detective agreed. She specifically targeted your ex-husband because of his connection to your father's company. The affair was just her way in. My stomach churned. 3 years of blame and self-doubt about my failed marriage suddenly shifted perspective. There's something else, the detective continued. We found this in her personal files. He handed me a document that made my blood run cold. It contained detailed notes about possible accidents that could befall me after the property transfer. Plans to frame Caleb for financial misconduct. Even sketches of how she wanted to remodel the house, starting with destroying Dad's garden. She would have killed me, I said flatly. She never would have gotten the chance, Caleb growled, gripping the arm of his chair. The detective nodded grimly. This evidence significantly upgrades the charges. Combined with the fraud charges and attempted bribery, she's looking at 15 to 20 years, minimum. After he left, we sat in stunned silence until Savannah's phone buzzed again. It's my contact at the DA's office, she said, reading the message. Ethan just finished his statement. He's admitted to everything, including helping Chloe access confidential company files before Dad's death. Did he know? I had to ask. About her plans for me? No, Caleb answered, scanning the documents. According to this, she kept that part to herself. Probably knew he wouldn't have the stomach for it. A thought struck me. Dad knew, didn't he? I said. That's why he put all this in motion? Savannah nodded slowly. He suspected. That's why he hired the private investigators, why he documented everything. He wasn't just protecting his legacy. He was protecting you. I walked to the window, looking out at the garden now swarming with news crews. The roses still bloomed, oblivious to the chaos their previous admirer had planned. We should release a statement, Caleb suggested. Control the narrative before Chloe's lawyers try to spin this. Already drafted, Savannah said, pulling out her laptop. A simple statement about cooperating with authorities and requesting privacy during this difficult time. Professional, dignified, everything Chloe wasn't. Dad would like that, I said, managing a small smile. There's one more thing, Caleb said, pulling an envelope from his jacket. I found this in Dad's personal safe. It's marked after justice is served. My hands trembled as I opened it, recognizing my father's handwriting once again. My dear Brooke, if you're reading this, then the truth has finally come to light. Don't let this experience harden your heart. The garden still needs tending, and life still needs living. I didn't set this trap just for justice. I did it so you could be free. Free from doubt, free from fear, and free to bloom again. Love, Dad. Outside, the reporters continued their live broadcasts, telling the world about the scandal, the arrests, the betrayal. But inside the study, surrounded by the evidence of my father's love and foresight, I finally felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. So, Caleb said, breaking the silence, what now? I looked at the roses outside, then at my brother and best friend. Now, we rebuild. The preliminary hearing came faster than any of us expected. 1 month after the will reading, I found myself sitting in a courtroom, watching Chloe and Ethan being let in, now wearing orange jumpsuits, a far cry from their designer clothes. All rise, the bailiff called out. Savannah squeezed my hand as we stood. She'd insisted on being both my lawyer and moral support, saying some moments required both legal expertise and friendship. You don't have to speak today, she whispered. The evidence speaks for itself, she added. But I knew I had to. Dad's last letter had said not to let this harden my heart, and staying silent felt too much like fear. My stomach churned. Stop. You need to hear this, Brooke, Caleb said, continuing to read aloud. Phase 1 complete. Marriage destroyed. Phase 2. Isolate the daughter from her support system. Phase 3. Gain the father's trust. Final phase. Eliminate all obstacles permanently. That's when Dad confronted her, isn't it? I asked, recalling Dad's sudden insistence on updating his will. Savannah nodded. He showed me this journal 3 months ago. That's when we started building the case against her. But there's more, Caleb said, flipping to another section. She wasn't working alone. There's a whole network of people involved in these schemes. Names, dates, bank accounts, everything. A sharp knock at the door interrupted us. The detective from earlier entered, looking even grimmer than before. We've been going through Miss West's contacts, he announced. Found something interesting about her past. She's not who she claims to be. He laid a series of documents on Dad's desk. Birth certificates, passports, driver's licenses. All with different names but the same face. Her real name is Chloe Morgan. She's wanted in 3 states for similar schemes. The FBI's been looking for her for years. Chloe Morgan? The name hit me like a physical blow. The woman who was convicted of killing that businessman in Florida? His death was ruled an accident, the detective corrected. But yes, same person. She served 5 years for fraud, got out, changed her identity, and started over. Your father was her biggest target yet. Savannah was already on her phone. I'm calling the DA. This changes everything. With these priors, she's looking at life in prison. There's something else, the detective added. We found this in her safety deposit box. He handed me a USB drive. It's footage of your father confronting her about the journal. Thought you might want to see it. With trembling hands, I plugged the drive into Dad's computer. His face filled the screen, sitting in this very study, looking directly at Chloe. I know what you're planning. Dad's voice was steel. I've read your little journal. Quite the career you've had, Margaret. Chloe's face on the screen went white. How did you really think I wouldn't investigate the woman trying to destroy my family? Dad continued, his tone unwavering. I've known who you are since the day you started working for my company. Then why? Why did I let you continue? And he asked. Because sometimes the best way to catch a snake is to let it think it's winning. Dad leaned forward, his voice cold. You're finished, Margaret. Everything you've done, everyone you've hurt, it ends here. You're dying, Chloe, Margaret spat. You can't stop me, she sneered. Dad's laugh was chilling. My dear, I already have. You just don't know it yet. The video ended, leaving us all in stunned silence. He knew, I whispered. He knew everything right from the start. And he built an airtight case, Savannah added, one that would protect you and expose her entire network. The detective gathered his documents. The FBI wants to talk to you tomorrow. With this journal and your father's evidence, we can take down her whole organization. After he left, I walked over to Dad's chair, running my hand along the worn leather. He let her think she was winning, all while making sure she'd never hurt anyone again. Classic Dad, Caleb smiled, always playing the long game. Savannah's phone buzzed. The DA just approved the new charges. They're upgrading it to a federal case. Haley, or Margaret, will never see the outside of a prison again. I picked up Dad's journal from his desk, the one he'd kept all his life, and opened it to his last entry. Sometimes justice takes patience. Sometimes it takes sacrifice. But most importantly, it takes faith in the truth. Brooke will understand when the time comes. The words were like a whisper from the past, but I felt Dad's presence all around me. The guard longer than before, Savannah said softly. The preliminary hearing resumes tomorrow. Are you ready to finish this? I looked at the evidence spread across the desk, at Dad's journal, at the garden beyond the window, where all this began. Yes, I said firmly, it's time to end this. For Dad, for everyone she's ever hurt, Caleb added, and for you. Mostly for you, he finished. The gavel's final crack echoed through the courtroom like thunder. In light of the overwhelming evidence and the additional federal charges, the judge began, this court sentences Chloe Morgan, also known as Chloe Morgan, to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Haley Margaret stood rigid in her orange jumpsuit, every trace of her former polished facade gone. When they led her past our bench, she stopped, turning to face me one last time. I hope you're happy, she hissed. You've ruined everything. No, I replied calmly. You did that yourself. The only difference is that this time, your target fought back. The bailiff pulled her away as she tried to respond. Behind her, Ethan was already being led out to begin his own 15-year sentence. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us, but Savannah's firm voice cut through the chaos. My client has no comment, Savannah said, her voice steady, except to say that justice has been served, not just for her family, but for all the families affected by these crimes. Back at the house, Caleb was waiting with a surprise. The FBI finished processing Dad's study, he said. They found this hidden in his desk. He handed me a small box. Inside was a single key and a note. For when justice blooms, check the greenhouse. The greenhouse had always been Dad's private sanctuary, a place he retreated to when he needed to think. I hadn't been inside since his death. Want us to come with you? Savannah asked. I shook my head. I need to do this alone. The greenhouse key turned smoothly in the lock. Inside, the air was warm and thick with the scent of blooming flowers. Dad's prized orchids still thrived, clearly tended by someone, probably Caleb, during these past months. In the center of the greenhouse stood Dad's workbench, and on it, a large envelope with my name on it. Inside, there was a deed and another letter. My dearest Brooke, it began, by now justice has been served, and the truth has come to light. But justice wasn't the only thing I wanted to cultivate. In this greenhouse, I grew more than flowers. I grew hope. Hope for you to find your strength again, to bloom despite the shadows others cast. The deed in this envelope is for the vacant lot next to your old flower shop. I bought it the day after I confronted Margaret. It's time for Harrison Gardens to grow beyond our home. Your talent for bringing beauty into the world shouldn't be limited to just one garden. Remember what I taught you. Some flowers bloom best after a frost. You've weathered your winter, Brooke. Now it's time to bloom again. Love always, Dad. I walked back to the house in a daze, clutching the deed and letter. Caleb and Savannah were waiting in the kitchen. Well? Caleb asked. I spread the deed on the counter. He bought me the lot next to my old shop. He wanted me to expand the business. That's not all he did, Savannah said, pulling out her tablet. The Harrison Gardens trademark was registered 6 months ago. He set up everything: business plans, permits, funding. All it needs is you and us, Caleb added. I've learned a thing or two about gardening these past months. Someone had to keep his orchids alive. A knock at the door interrupted us. The detective entered, looking pleased. Just thought you'd want to know. 3 more victims of Margaret's schemes have come forward. With their testimony and your father's evidence, we're looking at closing over a dozen cold cases. Dad would have liked that, I said quietly. He always believed that every truth finds its light eventually. Speaking of truth, Caleb said, after the detective left, I found something else while tending the greenhouse. He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo of a small plaque hidden among the orchids. The inscription read, "For Brooke, who taught me that the strongest flowers grow in broken places." He put that there right after my divorce, I said softly, realizing the depth of Dad's foresight. I think he knew even then that I'd find my way back. So, Savannah said, pulling out her legal pad with that familiar glint in her eye, should I start drawing up the business papers for Harrison Gardens? I looked out at Dad's garden, where the roses still bloomed, defying everything that had happened. Beyond them, I could see the future he'd envisioned for me. Not just justice, but growth. Not just survival, but flourishing. Yes, I said, feeling stronger than I had in years. It's time to grow something new. To Dad, Caleb said, raising his coffee mug. To justice, Savannah added, lifting hers. I picked up my own mug, thinking of orchids and roses, of truth and time, of endings and beginnings. To blooming again. Through the window, the garden glowed in the afternoon sun. Each flower was a testament to Dad's belief that beauty can grow, even in life's hardest soil. He'd given me more than justice. He'd given me back my future, one bloom at a time.